Hi everyone, it's Rachel back with the Shades of Orange. Today I want to do a special round of recent reads focusing on the horror books that I have received for review. I have a good mix to talk about today, so let's get started. First, I want to talk about a horror novella, and that is The Thrumming Stone by John Brhell and Joseph Sullivan. This is one that I received from the authors. It's about a man who is looking back in his childhood, remembering a time when him and his sister were playing, and they came across these stones that looked a lot like Stonehenge, and when they touched them, they got terrible premonitions that something catastrophic was going to happen. This story is very much a coming-of-age story. It is set in the 1990s and has a lot of nostalgia for me because that's when I grew up. So there's references to all sorts of things like TV shows and movies and slang that definitely brought me back to a time in my past. And one of the things I like so much about Cemetery Gates, their publisher, is that they tend to include illustrations in their books. These were done all in black and white, and there's just some really creepy images that they put in there kind of depicting what they were seeing when they touched the stones. And I just really like that aspect of the story. I definitely thought that it brought a lot to it. I do want to mention, unfortunately, that I did catch some technical errors in this book that did take away from the reading experience a little bit. This is considered a finished copy, although it was their first run, so hopefully that will be caught later on. But despite that, the story definitely has a lot of heart. You can tell that the authors really enjoy writing the stories that they do. And it was just a very quick read because it was novella length, so it was kind of a fun story, again, with a lot of nostalgia. So if you enjoy other books from Cemetery Gates, you'll probably enjoy this one as well. Next, I read an anthology called Fright into Flight, which is edited by Fallon, and I've received a digital copy from Word Horde. This was made in response to an anthology that Stephen King edited by a similar name that got a lot of flack because of the fact that every single author in that collection was a guy. So Amber decided to make her own collection featuring an all-female cast of authors, and this story collection worked really well for me. There was a good variety in the stories. They are all themed around flight, but some of the stories took the theme very literal and were set either on a plane or in an airport, but a lot of the stories took a more abstract approach to flight. And there were some of my favorite authors in this collection, including Damien, Angelica Walters, and Nadia Bulkin, but there was a lot of authors I hadn't read before, and that's what I like so much about anthologies, is a really good way to find new to you authors. I've heard so many people say that it's just really hard to find female authors, and this collection really shows that they are out there. You just need to look for them. So it was a really good way to get introduced to some new voices in the community. And I definitely liked a lot of the stories. I'm going to link my Goodreads review down below where I list some of my favorites, but there were some really good ones. Some of them were more science fiction. One gave me Firefly vibes, which is always a good thing. Another one dealt with artificial intelligence. And of course, I love the story that was done by Walters, which was about a documentary featuring a time where girls just floated into the sky and disappeared, as well as Bulkin's story, which is a twist on the final girls trope, which I very much enjoyed. So if you can't tell, I very much enjoyed this anthology. I didn't love all the stories, but there was enough good ones in the collection that definitely makes it worth the read, so I would recommend that one. Next, I want to talk about Wintertide Omega by Paul Roberts, and this is one that I received directly from the author. And this is about a set of brothers that decide to go into the Canadian wilderness to track down what happened to their grandfather who has gone missing. You find out that the grandfather was possibly paranoid or possibly onto some big conspiracy theory, and the brothers go into the wilderness to see what is going on. This is a Canadian survival story set in the winter. And if you know me, that is pretty much all of my horror buzzwords, so I was very excited to pick this one up. And I've got to say, the author is Canadian, and you can tell because this book is so Canadian. It references organizations and things like toques and all sorts of things that are just so authentically Canadian. Can I say Canadian one more time in this video? If you don't know, I'm Canadian myself, so I really did appreciate that because I find that when American authors write about Canada, they just don't get it right. But this author really understands what it means to be cold, and that definitely came through in the story. Unfortunately, I didn't connect with the characters as much as I wanted to. I found them a little bit flat, and because of that, I really didn't get pulled into the story. Despite that, it's a very quick read. It's just over 200 pages, and I did fly through it in one day. So if you're looking for a fast-paced adventure story, you might still want to check this one out for yourself, especially if you also enjoy survival stories that are set in the Canadian North, because that was definitely my favorite part of the story myself. Finally, I read a novella called Within the Walls by Michael Whelan, and this is a book that I received a digital copy from the author. It's actually novella length, and this is the story of a woman who moves into an apartment building with her son, and of course, like you would expect, there is something strange going on within the walls of this building. You find out slowly throughout the story that something has happened to the son. He has lost his sight. It's supposed to be temporary, but you're really not sure. And a lot of the story is piecing together the backstory on this family as to what happened to them. And I will say that this book really caught me by surprise. I do have to mention, unfortunately, that I did catch some technical errors in this book that took away from the story a little bit. There were weird issues with spacing and capitalization that was inconsistent, things like that, that really should have been caught because this is considered to be a finished copy. I normally would put aside a book like this and tell an author that I wasn't comfortable to review it, because I always say that I don't review beta copies, and I do expect a certain level of professionalism and finalization in the work that I'm going to review. However, the story ended up really catching my attention and I didn't want to stop. The prologue is so visceral, and the way that it is described, what is happening between the walls of the building, just really grabbed me in a way I didn't expect. And so I kind of bent my own rule and decided to keep reading despite those technical deficiencies. I feel like there's a really good story here, and I ended up really enjoying it. This story was very unexpected. If you know me, you know that I often complain that haunted house stories are overdone so many times, but this one just took a really imaginative approach to it. And of course, I like the fact that there were some really gruesome moments in it, and it definitely does not shy away from the darker sides of humanity, because the story blends together both supernatural horror as well as human depravities, and I ended up really liking it. So I do need to caution that if you are reading it soon, there may still be technical errors in it. I did point that out to the author, but despite all that, I enjoyed the story a lot, and I was able to look past it, and I just really enjoyed the actual reading experience. So if you're looking for a good story, looking for a haunted building story that is a little bit different, a little bit dark and creepy and stomach churning, a book that will make you uncomfortable, because it made me uncomfortable, which doesn't happen a lot, I would actually recommend this one. I liked it. So that's it for this quick round of recent horror reads focusing on the books that I've received for review. Hopefully you found this helpful in deciding which books you want to check out for yourself. If you have any thoughts or comments, I'd love for you to leave them down below. If you're not already subscribed, I hope you do so, and please give the video a thumbs up because it definitely helps with those YouTube algorithms. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching. Talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.